The last time we spoke about a little bit about time, and we're gonna linger a little bit more on this today. You see, to grasp time, to understand time, time to progress, time to heal, time to get better, and therefore to put time completely away because of the danger of living with time or in time. I think it's quite easy to grasp it. In a moment of fury, in a moment of complete solitude with the way we live, and complete solitude with the essence of the way we live, which is time, if we are alone with that, if we are alone with time, and in such intense solitude and absolute solitude with time, in that private, intimate moment, it's quite easy to see and reveal the fabric of time, the fabric of how we live, the fabric of really everything. Because again, I think time is the air we breathe. We interact with the world around us, with our colleagues, our family, our children, our neighbor, or this stranger. We interact with all of them in time. Even with ourselves, we conduct ourselves in time. I will go to the gym, I will run today so that I may get better tomorrow. And while it is perfectly fine to, progress gradually, materially, in things as sports, or in terms of learning a language, or in terms of going from point A to point B, etc., I fear that we internalize that concept of time and we reflect it on everything. Again, relationships included, well-being and wellness included, and we think that if it works, if time works in physical fitness, it will surely work in emotional fitness, right? Or wellness, or well-being, or peace, or prosperity. And I think to uncover time, or the reality of time, the reality of our living, the reality of our livelihood, because this is really what livelihood is. Livelihood is not merely how we earn money and the salary that we get. That's not merely livelihood. From the very word livelihood, you see how we corrupt things. You see how we dilute the meaning, true or real meaning of things. The word livelihood has become representative of only money and career and income and salary. Whereas the very word livelihood is much more than that. I mean, just the word itself is much more than that. And yet we hardly look at that word. Livelihood, quality of living, the quality of life, and everything included in it. Therefore, I think it is possible to reveal the reality of time, the reality of our livelihood in privacy, in a moment of intimacy, in a moment of observation. A moment that is full of our senses, our emotions, our watchfulness. And yet, I fear that to uncover something as broad and as all-inclusive and as vast as our livelihood, as the way we live in time with time. I think it's also devastating. On the one hand, it's quite easy to see it fully, totally, but also it's quite devastating. Devastating to what we know. And I think I suspect that we don't observe totally, not only time, but anything really. Anything worth watching, worth uncovering, and worth understanding. We don't observe totally, or understand totally, or approach something wholeheartedly, because it would be too devastating to our way of life. The more you know, the more headaches you will have, right? This is what everyone seems to think. The less you know, the better. Stick to your job. Stick to what brings you money. Don't go left, don't go right. Don't look left, don't look right. Mind your business. And literally from the very word, mind your business means stay attentive only on your business, only on what brings you income, only what brings you material gain. Forget everything else. Don't have headaches. Don't try to understand the world you live in. Don't try to be wise. Leave that to the experts. Leave that to the books. Leave that to the gods. Mind your own business. Because if you don't mind your own business, your business might be devastated, right? And I think we have a feeling of that. We are afraid of that. We fear losing or risking what we have built all our lives, what we have studied, what we have worked for. We've studied for years, many of us. Years, decades even. And we've practiced the profession for decades to reach a high position. And we will do anything to avoid risking all of that. We will do anything to avoid risking transferring all of that wealth and transferring all of that knowledge, not only wealth of knowledge, not only wealth of money and wealth of property, and wealth of resources to the next generation. We will go to great lengths to avoid risking all of that. We're afraid of risking that. We are selfish. We are self-centered. We are group-centered. That's it. And that's why we are afraid. Because we are selfish, we are afraid. Right? We will do anything not to risk that, including not understanding life and living, including living a mediocre life. We'd rather live chasing money and earning money and position and power than to live a whole meaningful life, right? Mediocrity is a small price for us to pay for a world of material gain, for a world of power and position and social respect. How silly. How silly. Have you noticed how silly we live? The respect that we chase, how respectable is it really? Where is the virtue, nobility, and elegance, and simplicity, and beauty in the respect that we buy? Where? Do we feel dignified? Do we really feel dignified? And do we really feel noble? Do we really feel happy? Do we feel bliss? Do we feel clarity? Do we feel simplicity and beauty? At the end of the day, after we have gained and accumulated the respect, the wealth, the property, the social standings, the reputation that we have diligently built decade upon decade, do we really end up feeling those virtues, those qualities? I don't think we do. I think we hope to feel them. I think we live in complete disappointment and bitterness and cynicism, which seems to increase more with age. The more we realize that we've not really attained anything of real value. It's sad to see how even when we get older, we still chase the same silly dreams, silly pursuits, ugly pursuits, insular pursuits, selfish pursuits, material pursuits, meaningless living. And not only that, we very sadly seem to condition the next generation based on it. We do much more harm than good. In fact, I don't think we do any good in our lifetimes. Really, essentially. You're not going to like hearing this, and you may even disagree. And to an extent, I also disagree with this statement. I think it's quite noble and endearing when parents go a long way to provide for their family. Education and food, even more basic things. I think it's quite noble, really. But I'm afraid that included is hardly doing any good at the end of the day. In the world, in the community, in the neighborhood, in the household, individually, emotionally, psychologically, spiritually. It's going to waste. The basic struggle and the noble struggle of the everyday man and woman providing for their family and children, while very endearing and beautiful and noble and selfless from a certain perspective, I'm afraid it's all going to waste. And one need only look at the world and the society and the community and the neighborhood and the even the small circle that we have knitted around us to see that mediocrity, to see that waste. We struggle all our lives to give education, a good education to our children, to even send them from one region to another. We send them overseas, over vast oceans, to live a better life, to have better passports, and to have better education, and they have to have their own, better conditions for their own families. And while they do get that education and that income and that passport, and that apartment or house, how do they end up living? And what do they end up contributing to this world? Don't they also live an insular life, or perhaps even more insular than the previous generation. And I'm still not even talking about all the pressures that come from outside to make us even more insular, the information age, etc., so on and so forth, propaganda. I'm not even mentioning this for the time being. I'm simply referring to the earnest and innocent pursuit of, basic things in life, education, apartment, house, etc. Isn't even our basic pursuits of these things making us more insular at the end of the day, or sustaining our insularity, sustaining the corruption around us, sustaining our lack of meaning, a lack of purpose, and lack of passion, and mediocrity? I think it is. And therefore, from this angle, I say it is essentially, ultimately, at the end of the day, all going to waste. And it's not only about this one family or this generation, their efforts and noble efforts, struggles for their children and families that is going to waste. I'm afraid everything that humanity has built for thousands upon thousands of years has gone to waste so far, has been going to waste so far. And not only that, has been destroying the next generation even. As long as we raise our families the way we do, without questioning, without conditioning them, or without encouraging them to question everything, including time, including their own livelihoods, including innocence, what really constitutes innocence, what really constitutes nobility, beauty, simplicity. We must encourage them to question these things. We must not condition them, so that not only do they get that passport or that salary or that apartment, but they also get much more. And hopefully one day bring about a world that is free from all of these meaningless things and divisive things, passports, nations, currencies, meaningless jobs, so on and so forth. I think it's very possible to bring about such a good world, cooperative world, peaceful world, meaningful world. I think it's very possible. And again, I think it's quite devastating to let go of time. Or back to the topic of time now. I think it's quite devastating. And I think we have a hunch, we have a fear, an ongoing fear that we don't want to risk what we have. If we risk what we've built, then we're out there in, in the chaos and the jungle. And while I'm not encouraging anyone to go out in the jungle and to live without any money, I'm merely pointing out the importance of, or what does, in fact, okay, let me rephrase that. What does living without time have to do with that necessarily? If I let go of something destructive as time, internally, inwardly, psychologically, why does it have to mean that I will starve? Or it doesn't have to mean that. It might mean that I will no longer seek the marketable respect that I've been seeking all my life. It might mean that I will let go or leave behind all this meaningless world of reputation, of image, of respect and power and, you know, infinite amounts of money and so on and so forth, and wasteful, you know, luxury and all of that, might have to leave behind a world of entertainment, of drugs, of therapy, of drink and smoke and infinite sex or endless sex, and but that should be fine. I think we will live to see the day after such devastation. I think it's important to bring about such a devastating quality to our present livelihood. And I think that devastation, there's not much choice in it. That's the beauty. I think to let go of time completely and to let go of a world without entertainment and insularity and material greed, I think it's the same as in itself is to change radically, emotionally. Yeah, I think it's best to stop here and not dwell too much on this for the time being.